What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Tonight we are in the 6 Feet Under Fab shop, and we're going to be working on the Cherokee a little bit. The last time that we did a video on the Cherokee, I believe I was fixing some rust on the unibody in the back, and I also folded in some of these corners right here. You see right there where I folded the corners in. Well, since then I have done a couple of things. I have been slowly working on getting the frame stiffeners on. So I know I've said in the past video that we're doing frame stiffeners from the front bumper all the way to the rear bumper, and I figured while I was doing the rust repair, I might as well go ahead and weld on the frame stiffeners in the rear. So that's what I did. I tried recording myself doing some of the frame stiffeners. It was really boring, I'll be honest with you. I'll probably film myself doing a little bit of the frame stiffeners on the front and maybe the midsection, but really it was just clamping metal to metal and welding it for the most part. But I will get into a little bit of the do's and don'ts with the frame stiffeners, but I'll kind of show you what I've got now. So as you can see, it probably looks terrible on camera, but what I did was I welded the frame stiffeners on, and I did stitch welding. So I welded like an inch here, an inch here, an inch here, an inch up here, and then did the rosette welds. And then what I did, the reason that it looks like funky is because I used some seam sealer all the way around so that nothing could get behind the frame stiffeners. Like if he drops off in a deep mud hole, water and dirt can't go behind here and rust out what I've already replaced. So that's why it kind of looks like I've rhino lined it. Honestly, that's just a couple of layers of spray paint, but it's ugly, but it's strong, and that's all that matters. So the next thing that I want to do is I want to get this Jeep back on its own weight, and in order to do that, I have to put the leaf springs in the rear. And so that's what we're about to do right now. Chris, he ordered, I believe it's a 4.5 inch suspension system from Rough Country. So that's what we're putting on in the rear. So once I get it on, what I plan on doing is getting the gas tank in, and I want to be able to basically drive this Jeep in and out of the shop as I, have time to work on it. Just because it's been sitting here in my shop in the middle bay for a very long time. And as you can see, I've got Steven's TJ up there. I'll kind of show you what I've been doing with it. Sorry about my really messy shop. I've worked on about 4 Jeeps this week, and I just haven't cleaned up, I'll be honest with you. So he kept complaining of smelling exhaust fumes on the inside, and we pulled the carpet, and I'll show you what we found. This was on here like this. Of course, it was under the seat support brace that goes to the other side. But yeah, so this was about right here, and we did find some other holes right there that I had to fix. I didn't think it was YouTube worthy, but I don't know. What do y'all think? Would y'all like to see stuff like that? Rust repair. So anyway, what I had to do was I had to cut right here, and then I had to drill out every single one of these spot welds, and I ended up taking this out because you can see where this mounted right here, this was also rusted. So I had to build this back all right here. So once this was out, I rebuilt it and then replaced everything with sheet metal, seam sealed it, spray painted it, and then truck bed lined it. So Now it's definitely not going to have any exhaust fumes. And then I also threw a anti-rock on his Jeep. He found this on Marketplace. And honestly, I can't figure out why this section right here rusted alone. It almost looks like the previous owner spilt something, because the other side is not rusty at all. I don't know, it's really weird. If y'all have any ideas of why this section right here would have rusted, please let me know. Alright, but anyway, it's enough of that. So what I plan on doing now is I'm going to get this Rough Country leaf spring in the rear and get some new U-bolts on, and then we're going to try to get this Jeep back on its own weight. Up under the Jeep here, or beside the Jeep, I have the leaf spring right here. I know some people get confused on which end goes forward. On the Cherokees, you want to put the short end and the fat leaf spring bushing, you want to put that towards the front, and then the smaller bushing towards the rear. I have heard of people flipping these around whenever they do a comp cut, but we're not doing all that right now. So we're just going to put the larger bushing end forward and the smaller one towards the rear. So it's helpful that the axle's right here, because you can kind of rest it on the axle. Just like that. So to kind of sit for a second, and then I can take this crow's foot and stick it up right here and just kind of pull the whole thing forward just a little bit. So I've got the front bolt in. Now I'll get the rear bolt in. So I have the bolt in the front, and now I've got this pretty much lined up, and I've got a jack up under the rear axle right here. And now I'm going to slowly just pick up on the axle until it pretty much just lines up itself. Then I've got to get the bolt, and send that in. And of course it's not lined up on the other side. So now I'm going to pick up just a little bit more, because right now the leaf spring is at an angle apparently. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this bolt just a little bit back out and get back on the other side of the hole and pull up, which is what I should have done to begin with, to be honest with you, but I guess I was trying to look cool. Alright, so now I've got it lined up, and I'm holding it with the crow's foot on one side. And I'm just going to try to just slowly just like that. So I can't tighten it up yet, because you don't tighten up rubber bushings until it's back on its own weight. And plus, this shackle is pushed all the way forward, so whenever I lower it back down, it'll kind of go back into its normal position. And make sure you loosen these up so that the shackle moves freely. And now that the leaf spring is in position, I can take the leaf spring plate, put it down right here, and then I'm going to take new U-bolts. You definitely want to get new U-bolts. Just kind of push those up. Maybe that'll stay. And then take the other one, send up right here. Just like that. And that one doesn't want to stay. And the kit came with new hardware, so we'll be using that. Just gonna get those started, that way it don't hit the ground. And now we'll get the outer ones on. I'm not gonna torque these down just yet. I'm just gonna get them tight. But I'll torque them whenever it's back on its own weight. I have the Jeep back on its own weight all the way around. Of course, I haven't done the front suspension lift yet, but I'm pretty pleased with it. The only thing that I had to do is these shackles right here. I may have to get some different shackles just because they're kind of tilted forward. I may have to revisit that, but for right now, I'm good with it. I'll show you the driver's side. I think it looks pretty good. Definitely needs a bigger tire, in my opinion. Before I put the gas tank back in, I'm going to replace the fuel pump or the full fuel sending unit, just because on these Cherokees they're kind of prone for going out, and they're not that expensive to replace, so I'm just going to go ahead and do it. Before I even try to take the fuel pump out, I'm just going to try to clean this as good as possible. That way I don't get any of this old nasty mud inside of the tank. Ugh. Look at all that. I mean, if any of that gets in the tank, then your fuel filter is going to get clogged, and it's just not going to be pretty. The top fuel line off, and now I'm just going to take a chisel and a rubber mallet and just kind of go around . Try to slowly lift this up. There we go. I did get all the gas out, and then I took a rag and just kind of cleaned everything up. There was a little bit of metal shavings in there and some water. So definitely don't want either one of those. So now I'm going to take the new fuel pump and compare it to the old fuel pump and see what I have to do. So it looks like really all I have to do is just get the float installed. It's pretty simple there. Alright. So now I have to get this the new O-ring on. So I'm just going to slide this on just like this. And that should be everything. Alright. So I'm just going to go back over the mating surface with some brake cleaner just to make sure there's no grit or anything like that. I think we're all good. So I'm going to put this back in the same way that I took the other one out, with the fuel sending line facing that way. You kind of got to massage it in. It is spring loaded. And now I'm just going to take the ring and spin it on. It's a very tedious process, but fuel pump all installed, ready to go. I'm going to go ahead and pop this line on just like that. Make sure that's seated properly. And now Going to pick the gas tank up and see if I can get it mounted. Up under the Jeep here, you have to take, these are actually new straps that I had because the other ones were so rusted I couldn't put them back on. So I had a set of these laying around, but all you do is just pretty much just send those through the unibody and just kind of let them hang. Aha! Gas tank's in. So I'm not going to go too terribly tight just because I want to give myself some room just to get all my hoses and wire connections put in and my filler hoses and vent hoses and stuff like that. But it's out of the shop floor and it's in the Jeep, so I call that a win. Well, I was going to install the filler hoses, but they are pretty much garbage. You can see right here, it's coming apart and it's extremely dirty. So, yeah, whenever your hoses get like this, oh yeah. All right, so it is a few days later. It's actually probably a week later since I did any footage on the Cherokee. But so the last thing that y'all saw me do was I told y'all I needed to get some more hoses. So Chris bought some hoses, and check this out. I have the Cherokee on the lift finally, and I'll show you pretty much everything that we're going to be doing to this Jeep. This is a 4.5-inch rough country suspension kit. I've got the uppers, the lowers, I've got the shocks, I've got a water pump I got to put in, sway bar, brake lines, some steering components and springs, pitman arm, track bar, adjustable track bar with a heavy duty track bar mount. So while I was waiting for those hoses to come in, what I did was I went ahead and put the Jeep on the lift, obviously, and what I plan on doing before I dive into any of that suspension work, these are the frame stiffeners or the unibody stiffeners that I'm going to be welding on. I just have them bolted on right here. You have to drop the cross member, and so that's why I've got the transfer case and transmission supported with the jack. So I don't know, I may go ahead and weld these on. So it's pretty cool because it's already got the holes drilled and everything, and it lines up perfectly. I may go ahead and tack some of those on. And one thing that I'll show you, I left this one off for a reason. I went ahead and painted the backside just like I did on the rear. You always want to paint the backside even though you're welding. That way you don't have any raw metal anywhere, because what's the point of putting these on if it's just going to rust on the backside, and then that rust is just going to transfer onto the Jeep, and then you've got a rusty unibody, and then you're back to square one. So I may wait on getting the filler hoses on and maybe go ahead and start working on these frame stiffeners. And if you're just getting into Jeeps, you might ask yourself, well, what's the point of the unibody stiffeners? Well, if you've ever taken a Cherokee off-road or any unibody vehicle and you flex it out and then you try to open the door, sometimes the door doesn't open. So those unibodies actually twist. That's just how it is. These unibodies, it's just very thin sheet metal, you know, formed and welded all together. So yeah, it's fine for daily driving, but anytime you take it off-road, there is a possibility that the unibody could twist. I've seen countless Cherokees, you know, flexed out, stuck. They go to try to open up their hatch to get out a strap and their back hatch doesn't open. it's because the unibody is twisted. These unibody stiffeners are going to stiffen up that unibody so that it pretty much eliminates 99% of the unibody flex whenever you're off-roading. And this Jeep right here is going to see a lot of off-roading. And then another thing is it keeps it from cracking. I've seen a lot of unibody vehicles, Comanches, WJs, especially WJs, Grand Cherokees. After so many years of twisting and flexing the unibody, it'll actually start to crack. And unibody cracks are pretty aggravating to have to drill out and weld and all that mess. So this is just a precautionary for, you know, the future of the Jeep. What I like to do is, typically I like to do this on the ground, that way I can just use jacks and stuff like that, but I figured it'd be easier on camera and now kind of regretting it, but I'm going to jack up with this pole right here and a floor jack just to get it to where there is no gaps. I got to go up a little bit more, where there's no gaps anywhere. And see, the Cherokee unibody is not just straight flat, it's not just parallel, it actually does have a slope right here and then it goes back parallel, and that's why they send them pre-cut, which is really nice. So what you do is you jack up and then you actually bend this piece with a floor jack so that it goes onto the unibody perfectly straight. So with some heavy duty clamps, what I'll probably do is jack up on it just a little bit more and probably go ahead and tack this in place once like I said, once I go up just a little bit more, and then I'll just work my way forward. So in situations like this, especially these unibody stiffeners, you don't want to just go ahead and weld it all in, because you know, you can see there's a gap right here. It's like a 1/4 of an inch gap, so this actually has to go up and over just a little bit. So I'm going to slowly start tacking this in, and then whenever I'm fully happy with it, I'll weld it all up. And one more thing before I get started, if you're doing this on a lift and you're applying pressure to the bottom of the Jeep, make sure that the Jeep doesn't rock at all, and definitely use some lift assists. You're going to be shifting the weight of the Jeep while it's up in the air, and just a little safety precaution. So I have some tack welds on the back, just enough to hold everything in place. I did move the jack, and you can see when I jacked up on this top separated, which is exactly what I wanted it to do. And now, I don't know if you're able to see it, but right here, everything is flush on the unibody. And of course, these are holding it, you know, on the unibody this way. So this is exactly where I want it. So once I tack this in, then I'll work my way to this bend right here and jack up on it and get some tack welds on that and just kind of work my way down. I did a little bit heavier than tacks on here. I'll show you what I got. So you can see I just pushed up on this, that way it formed to the body, and then right here I actually had to hit it with a hammer, and then I welded it in place. The welds aren't the prettiest, but it'll work. So I'm gonna come back and fully weld this. Like I said, I tack welded, or just did some stitch welding in some places. These right here I went ahead and fully welded, and I had some contaminants in this one. It started getting spongy, so I had to grind it back out and then re-weld it, and probably have to do another pass over that one. But I don't want to get this unibody too hot Right now you can barely touch it. So what I'm going to do is probably just call it a night and come back tomorrow night when this is, you can actually touch it and finish fully welding it, and then we'll get to the other side. Cool. So just some kind of tips that I like to do whenever I do these unibody stiffeners is I like to have a lot of light. I have these kind of construction lights right here because it can get kind of dark in those spots, and you want to make sure that you can visually see everything. I know, when you start welding, you're looking at the actual arc, but with the, it just really helps me to have a super bright light behind me. That way I can actually see what I'm doing. I mean, it is a dirty, nasty job welding on unibody stiffeners, but if you can get some 2000 Screamo music, and if you have an AC in your shop or a fan, get it going. Just take your time and don't overheat it, and you'll be just fine. It is the next night and my camera battery died, so I just finished welding and then spray painted it and went inside, and I'm going to show you what I just got done doing. So I can get you in there. So what I did was I used seam sealer everywhere I welded. It is not pretty, but I'm going to paint over it so it's going to be black. But I'm just letting it dry. I like to let my seam sealer dry like 48 hours or 36 hours or something like that, just to make sure that it's not still wet before I paint it. So this is what I use right here. I get it off Amazon and it is really awesome. So if you want to get some for your rig, I've used it on my full-size Cherokee, my Comanche. I've used it on TJ build. I've used it on this. I really like using this stuff mainly because it keeps moisture, dirt, water, whatever, road grime from getting into places where you don't want them to get them to. So even though I welded the frame stiffeners on, or the unibody stiffeners on, I stitch welded, and so there was places where water and mud could go behind them and just sit. Or what's that moisture going to do inside the unibody and in between the frame stiffeners? It's going to rust. I know I've said this like a million times. I really, really hate rust. And I know somebody in the comments is probably going to be like, well, I fully weld mine and no moisture gets behind it. Well, you don't really know that. And I just like to play it safe, and I would rather it not be that good to look at underneath. I would rather it be more protective than anything. So I don't know. What do y'all think? I have the cross member back in. All I did was just bolt it back up, and now I'm actually gonna get these hoses in. So I'll get the big one on, and you can't put this one on just yet because of the clearance up here. So I'll just feed that in, and then I'll just feed these on, and then get the hose clamps, and that's pretty much it for that. So once you got all the hoses in place, you can just line up your hose clamps and just tighten them up. You don't have to go too terribly tight, but I like to put mine just a little past snug. So I have the Jeep lower now where I can start taking off the front suspension components, because I have to do two things. I have to weld on unibody stiffeners, and I have to install this whole suspension kit in the front. So I'm probably gonna do that in another video. I don't want this one getting too terribly long. I really appreciate y'all watching me work on the Cherokee. If you don't mind, hit that like button and make sure that you are subscribed so you don't miss out on any further content on this Cherokee build. It's gonna be pretty cool whenever we're done. Anyway guys, I appreciate y'all watching and we'll see you on the next one.
Get out of here!